Getting your dream physique is much easier than you can imagine. It doesn't require endless hours of grueling workouts and extremely restrictive diets. If you don't take the time to learn and implement what I'm about to teach you in this free video, then you are always going to be working harder than you need to. Trust me when I say this, I lost 100 pounds and it took me over a decade to figure out how to achieve lasting weight loss, and over $100,000 I've spent probably in total, both for myself and then when I became a functional practitioner, figuring out what worked for patients to help them achieve lasting weight loss. I live this lifestyle and I maintain lower levels of body fat year round, and I only hit the gym 3 days per week. Lack of time needed and finances to achieve your dream physique are no longer an excuse, because in this free protocol that I'm about to give you right now, it's also extremely time efficient. So let's get rolling, guys. Okay, so in the sea of endless options out there, in terms of losing weight, getting fit, achieving your dream physique, no wonder you're confused, because shoot, even I get confused when I look at everything, because it's like there's a sea of information out there, and a certain percent of it's accurate, certain percentage of it is inaccurate. How do we make sense of everything? Why do some things work for these people and some things work for these people? Whew. But I think we can really boil this down to calories, a caloric approach versus a hormonal approach. And I got to show you guys a clip here from Alex Hormozi. If you guys don't know Alex Hormozi, I have so much respect for this individual. I quite literally think he's going to be the Warren Buffett of our time. I really think that one of the best individuals you can get business advice from, and just his mindset and his approach and what he's done so far, and where he's projecting himself and putting himself out. There's no one like this. So definitely check out Alex Hormozi when it comes to business advice. But I want to show you guys this clip when he talks about the approach of nutrition that he takes.
I've eaten dessert virtually every night for 20 years. I have never skipped dessert, and I've been able to maintain a
God, I wish I could have dessert every day.
I have done a lot of different diets, keto stuff. I've done high carb, I've done low carb, I've done high fat, I've done intermittent fasting, alternate day fasting, carnivore style eating, whatever. The last 10 years, I've pretty much eaten the exact same way. Be able to have business dinners, be able to have drinks. Many of the entrepreneurs that I know who've seen me eat and been around me a long time end up adopting this, and they never go back. What I'm not saying is this is the most scientifically researched, whatever.
Thank you for the disclaimer.
If something works for you, just keep doing that. Number one is you have to figure out what your goal is. You're either trying to get bigger, you're trying to get smaller. From there, you start at number 7 all the way up to 21. My videographers will put it right here, 7 to 21. And every 3, you go from extreme weight loss to moderate weight loss to maintenance to moderate weight gain to extreme weight gain. All you have to do is multiply your body weight. So I'm gonna use 200 pounds as my average because it's easy with math. So let's say I'm a 200 pound guy and I wanna get leaner. I'm gonna go to moderate cut, which is the second from the bottom here of these 3, which you've got 10, 11, 12. And I'm gonna say 10 because it's easy math. And so I'm gonna multiply 200, which is my weight, times 10, which is this coefficient, which gives me, drumroll please, 2,000 calories, all right? Now, if you're like, doesn't it change? What about my exercise? And what if I have a physical job? Doesn't really matter. If you lose too much weight too fast, go to 11, you can adjust it. We've got 2,000 calories, great. Here's step 3, you multiply your weight.
All right. Man, I wish it was that easy. And look, again, a ton of respect for Alex Hormozi. And I think that the reality is that method will work for a certain percentage of people. And so if it works for you, freaking great. I think it's going to work for significantly less people. And if you guys want to get into the science and understand better why a method of calories will work for some individuals versus others, then you need to check out this video right here, where I really lay the foundation. It's called The Hormonal Basis of Obesity. This is a long one, but I spent an hour and 20 minutes getting into the science, getting into everything that you possibly could need to learn to understand and adopt the insulin theory of obesity and weight loss dysregulation. So definitely check that video out. So look, in essence, in a quick summary, you have hormones in your body like insulin that are going to have dramatic impacts on your metabolism, and insulin is a signaling hormone. So yes, the energy balance, we have the literature that already proves the energy balance is the ultimate at the end, day to day, whether an individual is going to gain weight or lose weight. It's all about that surplus and deficit, just like Alex said in that video. But what he is not talking about or discussing, and that's, again, his disclaimer was there, is if you have opposing signals like insulin that put your body into storage mode at the same time of being in a caloric deficit, you will get some short-term weight loss. But number one, you may lose more muscle mass. Number two, more importantly, you're going to rebound much faster from increased levels of hunger and decreased metabolic rates. And again, you'll learn all about that in that hormonal basis of obesity. All right, guys. So I've created this chart for you. And I think this visual, I know I'm a very visual person too, but this is a representation of my schedule. And this is the representation of a schedule that I think is going to work for the most amount of people. Again, what category am I putting myself in? That a lot of us are in here is I have a busy schedule, a demanding schedule. I cannot work out as much as I want to. Let me rephrase that. I choose to only work out 3 days per week so that I can allocate my time towards more important areas of my work. I want to make that clear. I could, if I wanted to prioritize this, I could easily work out more often, but that's the beauty of this protocol is I don't need to in order to maintain this lean and muscular physique. And so this schedule is going to be an initial representation for you guys. I'm going to quickly go through it, and then we're going to get into the video. And then I'm going to show you guys this chart again so that we can make more sense of it. All right. So when we look at the week, right, we got our lifting bar, we got our nutrition bar, and then we kind of have notes. All right. So lifting on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Why do I do that? I do that because there is some awesome magic that happens when you consume carbohydrates on the days when you lift weights. There are receptor sites on your muscle cells called GLUT4 receptors, and those receptors actually absorb glucose independent of insulin. So we have a dual mechanism of action where your muscle mass and your muscles will absorb that glucose, which makes it harder for the possibility of fat storage. So consuming the same amount of carbohydrates on another day, when you don't have weightlifting, when you didn't lift weights that day, you could have a more preferential shift and potential increases in fat storage. So timing your carbohydrates on days when you're lifting weights is not only protective of your fat cells and the possibility of increasing fat stores, but on the other side of the equation, we need carbohydrates in our system to fuel a powerful and effective workout. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, I tend to be more social on the weekend. I'm working less, although these last 2 years, I work every day, but I work less and I have more social time on the weekends. And so naturally, my schedule is going to present more carbohydrate laden opportunities, if you will, in front of me. And guess what? I'm able to just roll with it, and I don't have to fidget and worry so much about it and adjust and freak out and stress because I'm lifting weights on the weekend. So I lift weights Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as you can see. Now I put optional workout from Monday through Thursday. Okay. So if you can budget in and you can afford the time, great. I would focus on more of your cardio or your high intensity cardio, but save the weightlifting for when you're going to be eating the most amount of carbohydrates. So we can really break down the week into sort of the 4-day section and the 3-day section. Your 4-day section is going to be your focus is fat loss, muscle preservation, and your 3-day section is going to be muscle building and minimizing fat gain. This is how we can get a really strong recomposition response from the body, or we can just have strong muscle preservation and just maximize fat loss in either direction. Okay. So when it comes to nutrition during the fat loss section, this is where I lower my carbohydrate intake and I get my long fasting. So at the center of this protocol is a singular long fast. And we're going to get into this here in a little bit. But as you can see here on Monday, I'm going keto. So Monday's after the weekend. If you guys ever notice, a lot of people don't talk about this, but after a long weekend, when you come back in, or after a day of eating increased calories, you naturally have a lower appetite. Pay attention to that if you never noticed it before, but I promise when you will, you'll notice it. And so this is your body's own regulatory system approving that there's the calories in, calories out idea is too basic. You have hormones that detect swings and changes. So it's easy to come in on Monday and go straight to keto and not eat that much because I ate more on the weekends. Then I'll start my fasting window from Monday night and I'll fast all day Tuesday, going to bed, wake up Wednesday, break my fast at lunchtime. And then I'm back into the rhythm on the next days, eating 2 to 3 meals a day. So I break my fast on Wednesday, but I stay keto. And then I'm keto all day Thursday. And then Friday, right? So now starts my 3-day muscle building phase or maximal muscle preservation. And we're going to talk about how you can swing in one direction versus the other. But in this 3-day phase, we need carbohydrates in the muscles. So I personally will get up, and that'll be probably the only day of the week that I actually have breakfast. And it's nothing crazy, about a half cup to 3/4 of a cup of oatmeal. I'll throw in a scoop of whey protein. I have some really delicious whey protein that's really good flavored. And then I'll throw in about a half cup of egg whites. Sounds a little interesting. My believe it or not, my girlfriend actually got me into adding the egg whites, and it really does add a nice creamy texture. You cook up the oatmeal. Once the oatmeal's done, you add the protein powder, and then you add the egg whites, and you keep it on low heat and stir it up, and the eggs fluff up, and it's delicious. And I throw in a lot of monk fruit and stevia too as well. I got to get that 50 to 75 grams. I'll do that. I'm lifting midday. Well, however you time it that day, just make sure about 3 hours. This is key. 3 hours before you lift, you want to get this 50 to 75 grams of carbohydrates in, because it does take time for those carbohydrates to become stored into your muscles to provide fuel for that workout later. Now you're good to go for the weekend. Now we can shift our frame of reference, and notice where it says, eat as you please, Saturday and Sunday. How awesome is that? Look, I'm not saying we can go to buffets and throw it down, but I think you get my point. Not having to stress, not having to worry, no counting macros, just enjoy it. As you see in my cardinal rules below, protein every meal. That's just an automatic. I don't care about what else you eat on the weekend. Now, Friday, there is a little bit of a modification. I want you to keep your carbohydrates on the higher side, and I want you to just somewhat lower your fat. That, again, we're not counting calories. We're not counting macros. Let's just not get a fatty meal. We've just been keto for the past 4 days, so we can handle decreasing our fat intake, right? So when you choose your meals, just look at a meal that's leaner. When you look at your meats, let's avoid the fatty meats and let's go for leaner meats. So one of my favorite things to eat on a Friday night is a teriyaki chicken bowl with, I'll do chicken thighs, right? But you could, if you want to go even more hardcore, chicken breast would actually be great. And it's pure rice. And I'm doing a sugary based teriyaki sauce. Now, this is again, because we're in this protocol, we want to get an insulin spike. We just lifted that day. So I'm starting to get my muscle stores more increased with that stored glucose we call glycogen, and then I can roll off into the weekend. Okay. So cardinal rules, we talked about it. Protein every meal. Shoot for about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein every day, right? Do you have to count protein? Yeah, I mean, if you count a couple days and you notice you're averaging in that range, great. But if you decide to count the last week, or for example, and you estimate and you're way off, then maybe some sort of consciousness over your grams of protein can ensure that you're hitting the adequate, because you don't want to underhit it with all this effort that will cause undesirable results. Supplements will continue to be taken AM, PM. We're going to talk about that. And this question comes up because of the long fast. So we want to continue to take our supplements. We're going to discuss a high insulin spiking shake, which again, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, but without spending a ton of money, there is a shake recipe that I'm going to give you that we're going to break down, and it spikes the hell out of your insulin, which is awesome. And then finally, I've already talked about the optional workouts. Okay. So weekly long fasting, we're going to get into a 36-48 hour fast once per week. So I know. You're like, are you crazy? Why are we talking about this? So, and by the way, if you want to take a deeper dive into why prolonged fasting for me is so vital for lasting weight loss as a whole, you're definitely going to want to check out this video where I break down exactly why long fasting is so crucial. All right. So the long fasting does many things. So let's just talk about the hormones really quick. So what it's going to do is optimize our hormonal profile dramatically. It's going to make us more insulin sensitive. It's going to reduce inflammation. It's going to make us more fat adapted. And that video is going to get into the science of that. So again, if you are an individual that already has pristine health, you're very insulin sensitive, you don't have a lot of inflammation, you don't have to fast. But check it out, guys. I still do this, and I will continue to do this for the rest of my life, because even at my state of high level of health, high level of insulin sensitivity, lower levels of inflammation, very fat adapted. Just the caloric restriction alone that I get from a long fast is just, I would rather do that the rest of the week. Guess what? I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to play with the numbers. And even the way that Alex showed that chart, which is awesome, by the way, because if you really are looking at counting calories, that is a much easier way to count calories. But even that's a pain in the ass. I don't want to look at my food. And you guys tell me in the comments, I don't want to, okay, so this drink is 200 calories. Okay, good. So I got the protein. So I'm good with this meal right here. Like, I don't want to do that. That to me is awful. And I think most people would agree. I've worked with thousands of patients over the past 10 years, and it's probably 1 out of 1,000 that tells me, hey, Dr. Jones, I actually enjoy counting calories. If you enjoy counting calories, you have an advantage over everybody else. You should do that. But for most of us, we don't. So really, aside from the hormonal optimization, which we can say is controversial, I know it's not. I just like getting my caloric deficit just wham, bam, done. And it's almost like zooming out for the week and saying, okay, I'm going to get all my fat loss in this 1.5 to 2 day window. And the rest of the week, I can focus on building muscle mass. Hence why we put that strategic fast within the 4-day window of a lower carb situation, so that prior to the fast, I'm already lowering my carb intake. So I slip into a fat burning zone much faster. And then when I come out of that, I'm in some deep level of ketosis, a state where you produce ketone bodies, and I am burning fat. And then I continue that ketogenic diet until Thursday, and then all the way to Friday morning, maximizing the amount of fat loss that I can possibly do. So why not 2 24-hour fasts? Look, same answer I talked about before. I believe in that hormonal improvement that it gives you. And again, there's something like if you think about 2 24s, right? What does that look like? That would be a fast from dinner to dinner, right? So that would be fasting from Tuesday night to Wednesday night, for example, and then maybe Friday night to Saturday night. That does seem like 2 24-hour fasts. That does seem like 48, but really think about this for a second. When you go all day without eating, you have a very higher likelihood of consuming a very large meal that night, as you should. But how much of a caloric deficit did we really get? So you have 2 24-hour fasts, but you never really skip dinner. Look at that for a second. You go from dinner to dinner. And for 95% of us out there, dinner is the time where we consume the most amount of calories. So without thinking about it, without putting a ton of effort on it, you can look at that and conclude that same amount of fasting, 2 24 hours, but you're not going to get nearly as much of a deficit if you can skip one of those dinners. Skipping one of those dinners is going to ensure that you are going to get a much bigger caloric deficit that we need to achieve the dream physique. So let's stick with the one long fast, guys. And again, you might be thinking, well, how the hell am I going to do that? There's no way I'm going to eat my arm off. I'm going to get into how we can make that easier. So bear with me here. Okay. So appetite suppression is the key. I want to make this as easy as possible for you as possible. So I'm going to get through the powerhouse supplements that I have seen and I use regularly myself that make this so much easier. Number one, a company called Unicity. They have 2 products, Unimate and Balance. And so Unimate is a powerful concentrated version of yerba mate tea. Yerba mate tea has been known for a very long time of its potency too, because it's got caffeine in it too as well. So increases energy, but it also decreases appetite and improves metabolic flexibility. It's very popular in South America and unfortunately never really got too popular here in America. So one of the active ingredients is called cholinergic acid. And what the Unicity company did was concentrate the cholinergic acid to about 100 times potency. And if you've ever had yerba mate tea, it tastes like crap. It's very bitter. So you'd have to be sipping a gallon of bitter tasting tea all day to get the kind of potency that you would get from a single pack. And they made it taste great and it dissolves in hot and cold water. So I love Unimate and I love their Balance because their Balance is a broad spectrum fiber product. It's caffeine free. So that's going to be usually what I take to skip my dinners. It really, really expands. And it is, there's so much more evidence coming out about the gut. I'm going to be doing a couple podcasts and a couple YouTube videos coming up soon about the gut, but essentially a diverse microbiome is extremely important for lasting weight loss and overall health, and a broad consumption of various vegetables and fruits will contribute to that. Well, a lot of us, unfortunately, don't have access and don't have the ability to get a broad spectrum of vegetables every single week. And so a broad spectrum fiber product is the next best thing. Okay, CaloCurb. CaloCurb is my number 2 when it comes to appetite suppression. This is a lesser known product that's actually getting really big in New Zealand. They have some really good clinical data. The active ingredient, Ameristate, actually comes from these bitter extracts that are grown in these specific plants. And the receptors, right, that these bitter extracts act on are the GLP-1 receptors. Now, I forgot to mention Unimate 2 as well. So both Unimate and CaloCurb will work on the GLP-1 receptors. If you guys heard of that, semaglutide, tirzepatide, powerful, game-changing, virality through the door, out the door right now. Everybody's excited about these weight loss medications, and we're going to talk about those here in a bit because I do think they're worth mentioning. And we get GLP-1 receptor stimulation from these supplements too as well. So the CaloCurb, completely stimulant free. So you can take a couple pills in the morning and a couple pills in the afternoon. You always start low, kind of work your way up and progress to say a maximum of 4 to 6 pills per day. Okay, so here's something that a lot of people don't think is something that we can actually do. And here it is, guys, nicotine gum. Nicotine gum is awesome for fat loss and weight loss. And unfortunately, nicotine is so demonized. And, you know, it's understandably so associated with tobacco consumption. Nicotine is one ingredient, and tobacco is a compilation of many other things. We know chewing tobacco is dangerous and causes poor health and leads to cancer. We know how bad smoking is. And if you're using vaping as an idea that you think is safe, well, wake up, because literature is coming out that vaping is horrible for you too as well. So consumption of nicotine in isolation, though, is a whole different story. And while we don't have the studies yet to promote its consistent usage among everybody, we have some preliminary data that looks pretty good, possibly even helping in some neurodegenerative cases. But aside from that, plus, the safety profile is pretty high. It gives you a really high burst of energy. I actually use it whenever I'm feeling a little tired and I need to push through work. I love that it's short acting because it only lasts a couple hours, so I can do it maybe in the early afternoon. And I talk about caffeine in my other videos. You shouldn't do that past 10 hours pre-bed. So nicotine is powerful for the energy, but getting back to the appetite suppression, you find yourself in a massive swing of hunger and you're in the middle of that fast and you don't know what to do. You want something powerful, nicotine gum would be great. And look, this order that I'm giving you is the order of priority here. The Unimate is always my go-to with the balance. Then we can add the CaloCurb. Then we can supplement nicotine gum. The only contraindication for nicotine gum would be prior smokers. So you guys are out, stay away from it. But for my non-prior smokers, you could take advantage of this powerful, cheap alternative. I would recommend getting in a gum. You can get it at your local pharmacy. Also, by the way, all these supplements that we're talking about, I'm going to link to it in the description. A single page. There's going to be a free guide that you guys can access if you want, and you'll have links to where you can find my favorite. It's a brand called Lucy's, which is really good tasting, high quality nicotine. Okay, so exogenous ketones, MCT oil, aka fat bombs. So I love this as a option, and the reason why it's the last option is because it's fat, it's calories. The more calories we consume during a fast, the less fat we're going to burn. Now, and guys, I talked about my fasting video, so we can get in, you guys can learn more about the science of fasting. But in essence, there are two main things that happen with fasting. There's a ton of things that happen, but in terms of fat loss and the benefit from fasting, the most important thing is the absence of the insulin secretion. Okay, because when you're fasting, you're not eating. Right? Well, when we look at the three sources of calories, the three macronutrients, carbohydrates, protein, and fat, carbohydrates have a high spike in insulin. Protein has moderate, low, and fat is pretty much negligible, but still a tiny little bit. So this is why ketogenic diets have been sometimes called fasting mimicking diets, because the aspect of being on a ketogenic diet produces that lowering of those insulin levels, which fasting does, just much more aggressive and much faster, no pun intended, but there's some similarity there. So if you are really struggling as you adopt this lifestyle, as you start pushing the envelope and getting into longer fasts, and you're using, for example, all three of those other things, or you don't want to, whatever, you can rely on fat bombs. My first recommended would be actually using exogenous ketones. I have links to all this too as well. My second recommendation would be MCT oil. But then after that, any pure fat source could work. And again, the goal is to, if you need, say, 500 calories of fat to get you through a 48-hour fast, great. Next week, 400 calories. Next week, 300 calories. Play that game so that you can rely on almost no fat at all. And this is the game that we play as far as getting to that point. I don't expect you guys to be able to do a 36-hour the first time. Just play a game with yourself every single week and beat it. Get longer, get deeper, progress yourself to get to that point where you then can do a 36, 48-hour fast one time per week. I promise you, you're going to enjoy the fat loss just falling off your body with minimal exercise and without having to worry about calories or being so conscious about what you eat the rest of the week. All right. So I would be remiss here if I didn't talk about these appetite suppression medications. So there's a lot of them right now. And so we're talking about appetite suppressant medications as a whole, but really the ones that we really should talk the most about are semaglutide, tirzepatide. I'll talk more about tirzepatide, but these are GLP-1 medications, and they are changing the landscape for obesity management. And I'm a big fan of them. It's probably the most that I've ever embraced a single drug in my entire career, because I am a functional, holistic practitioner. In case you guys don't know, I own clinics that service across the nation. Me and my medical practitioners help our patients achieve lasting weight loss. And we deal with obese, insulin resistant, PCOS, menopause, very sick people, and all the others prior to that too as well. But for this population, it is in my belief that they're not going to get they're not going to crack through that initial barrier to say, be able to implement a protocol like this, because there's too much food chatter, there's too much resistance in front of them, and they can't break through that. Or if they do, it's very short-lived, and the body slaps them back in the face. Because, and you'll learn about that in the hormonal basis of obesity, but the hormones always win, and they regain that weight back really fast. So the GLP-1s are very popular in my practice, but we have a very unique spin and a very unique approach. So we're probably the only clinic that I see right now where we approach them as tools instead of long-term solutions. And this is the whole controversial thing. Is obesity a disease? I absolutely believe it is. But does that disease require lifelong dependence upon medication? And not only do I say no, but I've helped thousands of patients wean off these medications, and I'm their coach. It's a really cool relationship where my practitioners are the ones prescribing and I'm the one coaching. So I'm in the trenches every single week talking to these patients, and they're maintaining their weight. They use the meds in the beginning, and I got them off, right? And in case you guys don't know, that's a feat in of itself that most people think is impossible. Just look at this study right here, where we look at semaglutide, for example. Within a single year, patients that all the weight they lost, they regained it all back within a single year of stopping. So this propensity to regain your weight, not only is it exacerbated by the weight loss medications, but maintaining weight loss has always been very challenging. So I think for us, where the magic really happens is because I'm a big proponent of optimizing the hormones and improving your health, so that when you simultaneously achieve or accomplish a caloric deficit, your body can do what we want it to do, so that we can decrease fat mass and ultimately increase muscle mass. This is a reflection of your health status, specifically metabolic health, but overall health. If you guys want a deeper dive into this, definitely check out this video. It's a video specifically about weaning off GLP-1 medications, how to approach that. It's a really awesome in-depth video I did. You guys should check that out later. Okay, so we got into long fast. How do we break it? So your body needs a little bit of respect and appreciation after a long fast. We can't just go right back into our normal eating. We do need to sort of titrate our eating back to normal. So I'm a big fan of breaking your fast with bone broth or soup. Then a couple hours later, maybe another bowl, a bigger serving of bone broth and or soup, and then start transitioning yourself into more complex food. So increasing size is one aspect, but complexity also refers to how hard it is for the food to be digested. And so raw nuts, raw almonds, for example, and also raw vegetables, which are phenomenal for your health, can be problematic too quickly in too large sizes. So just listen to your body. Excessive diarrhea when you're breaking your fast is a good sign that you broke it too much, too fast. It's going to happen the first couple of weeks as you adopt this lifestyle. Just let me make that clear. But it will become, it should become easier. You should start getting less and less diarrhea, and just pay attention and learn about your body throughout this process. You'll start to discover what is better for your body in terms of breaking the long fast. Okay, so again, remembering that chart that we showed you earlier, I'm going to put it here on the screen here for a couple seconds, the chart again. Now you see where the fasting places. The fasting is placed here from Wednesday night, from Monday night to Wednesday midday, Wednesday evening, if you really wanted to push it, right? So now we have some structure. Now we see that the fast plays there. The fast can vary, right? If your schedule is chaotic, if something gets thrown off, you can always shift that fast a little bit earlier, a little bit later. That's okay. Let the flexibility and variability of life flow. Let's move on. Okay, so resistance training, resistance training, resistance training. You saw from my chart, I lift 3 days a week and I lift hard. These are my workouts. And lifting weights, now look, for me, lifting weights is always, I've been doing this for 20 years. So I want to emphasize to you guys that you need to learn, in my opinion, to develop a relationship with weight training where you fucking love it. I mean, a man or woman, because this video is just as much for my women as it is for men. Weightlifting is so powerful for so many things, not just lasting weight loss. I mean, look, there's literal data that shows strong correlation with a decrease in all-cause mortality as you age with having more muscle mass on your body. They literally look at obese people and see that the obese people that have higher amounts of muscle mass have significantly better markers of health. So like you got to prioritize muscle mass, and the data is trending in the positive direction. So weightlift. I will never do cardio unless I know it doesn't replace the resistance training that I need to do. And I'll do that until the day I cannot move my body anymore. So you want to train with a high intensity. And look, when it comes to, there's so many styles and there's so many approaches. So I want to just kind of give you guys a very basic framework. If you're new to lifting, for example, by the way, if you've never lifted before, getting a personal trainer at a local gym for 5 to 10 sessions, I think is one of the best investments you can make for a couple $100 a month. But let me give you a little bit of structure here. So we want to train in the zone of hypertrophy, which is muscle growth, right? We want to train like we're trying to bulk up and build muscle mass, but we are going to be in a fat loss program. So the more intense we train for muscle building, the better the stimulus is going to be to protect our muscle mass. That's why we train like this. So we train at an intensity that's high. We look at each set that we accomplish, and we take, besides our warm-up sets, we take the majority of sets to complete muscular failure. You want to choose a weight where you hit muscular failure somewhere between that 8 to 12 rep range. You want to keep your breaks about 90 seconds. Just enough time to let that burning lactic acid filter out, but not enough time for you to completely rest up and hit this with maximal weight. That's when we get more into the strength training, where it's a 3 to 4 minute rest and we hit it again with maximal strength. Maximal hypertrophy is in between that aerobic and that strength training range. So if we're lifting 3 days a week, as I've suggested, and if you have time for 4, even better, just look at the body, split it up into a 3-day routine so that you hit each muscle group 3 days a week. And it's that simple. And you don't need to overcomplicate it. You don't need to go wild with it. You don't need to go into the gym and record your workouts. And look, again, that level of neuroticism is only going to help you. But if it's not sustainable, don't do it. You know, now, could there be some benefit of doing this maybe for the first month or two as you just become more comfortable with it? With that approach and that intention, I think that's great. But if you go into it thinking that this is what you're going to do, I've been there, done that. It's not going to last. So you want to structure your workouts where we get maybe 1 or 2 larger muscles with a smaller muscle group and just kind of fluctuate. I like the idea of doing lower body on one day and then splitting your upper body into two, probably more so for my men. For my women, let's do lower body twice and get your upper body in one. This gives us an idea to prioritize and focus on areas of our body that are probably going to be a little bit more desirable for us gender-wise, but you guys can structure this however you want it. One cardinal rule is if you are not feeling soreness in your muscles the day after or 2 days after you train, then you're not training intense enough. You don't need to be dragging your feet after an intense leg workout like this individual over here, but look, you do need to feel soreness, and soreness is just a really good indicator that, all right, you hit it hard enough. If you guys notice here, do you guys see a theme? I'm giving you guys the most sustainable, but as objective as possible metrics that we can use to know that we're doing it right, but without taking too much of our resources so that it's maximally sustainable, because that's what matters most. Now, the cardinal rule that we mentioned earlier, make sure there are some carbs in your system when you train, and this is only going to be an issue on the first day that you train, because you are coming out of that fat zone, that fat loss part of the week. And so this is why we have that first breakfast with that first meal 3 hours before your first lifting of the week, 50 to 75 grams of some good complex carbohydrates. My favorite is oatmeal. Again, with the structure, you guys seen this chart now. We get it over the weekend. That's my favorite time. If you guys have a completely flipped schedule where you find yourself being more sociable, you work on the weekends and you have your days off during the week, then just flip it. It's totally okay. You can move this schedule around, but let's, and we're going to talk more about that at the end of the video. Okay. So when it comes to the quality of food, some powerful but easy rules to follow. Let's reduce our consumption of processed foods. You guys have heard this over and over. As much as there is a debate regarding calories versus hormones, there is no debate regarding consumption of processed food. Nobody is arguing that it's okay to consume processed foods. Like, we know how detrimental it is to our health. We know how detrimental it is to lasting weight loss. So follow a rule, for example, 80-20, 90-10, where you look at, okay, I love my Oreos. That's my guilty pleasure, is Oreos and chips. Those are my two guilty pleasures. And so I keep it to a certain percentage, 80-20 when I'm more in maintenance, 90-10 when I'm trying to actually drop body fat. And currently I am right now because summer is around the corner. I don't want you to get too restrictive. Look, how many times do you get really serious about a program and you go hardcore, you go balls to the wall? And I get it. Like, it's rewarding to see the fruit of your labor and look in the mirror and see the results. And the results are going to come faster when you go 100-0. But again, just like I said about counting calories, do you think you're going to go 100-0 for the rest of your life? So why the hell are you doing it now? Unless you can have a really good, honest conversation with yourself and say, I'm going to go hardcore for 3 months because I want to jumpstart my healing and this is how I want to do it. But then I intentfully plan on transitioning to a more sustainable. If you can approach it like that, I'm okay with it. But truthfully, when I coach my patients, I don't even do that, because I get more worried about them getting too hyper focused on that and then having a bit of a binge and a dramatic fall off the band. I don't want that. So I let them have a 90-10 rule. I tell them and encourage them to get a cheat meal in there, maybe 2 cheat meals in the week, so that we can keep things going and that we decrease the likelihood of that binge and we have a sustainable start from the beginning and it stays sustainable all throughout. Okay. So if you couldn't tell already, I'm a fan of this cyclic ketogenic carb cycling. You can call it carb cycling. It's tomato at this point, right? I want the fat loss portion of your week to be lower carbohydrate. And by the way, I call it keto. You can call it low carb. I don't care whether you're actually in a state of ketosis. If you want to improve your health during this, great, go for it. Keto Mojo is my favorite monitor that you can get off Amazon. And it's great. It's great, but it's an increased level of strictness that I think if you're watching this video, you're trying to get the easiest thing to do. So I don't check my ketone bodies. I have in the past. It was cool to do it for a little bit, but it got really boring. So you're going as low carb as you possibly can. So the other 3 days, though, is when you're going to get your carbohydrates. In my case, it's the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So there is this approach that And we can have an argument whether doing that provides additional physiological benefit from cycling your carbs. I'm just keeping it simple. Even if it doesn't, it's just the lower carb intake. Great. Lower carb intake is what I want to accomplish. And I would rather have a lower carb intake in the fashion where I get to have more carbs on the weekends and then I make up for it by having less carbs during the week. Just makes more sense, and it keeps my insulin levels lower. So there's just so many reasons why I recommend this sort of kind of cyclic approach. I wanted to interrupt for a quick second and tell you guys about the free weight loss plateau busting guide that you can get. I'll link to it in my description, guys. I break down the exact steps of what you need to solve that dreaded weight loss plateau, and more importantly, how to prevent it. Now back to the show. So we looked at the Alex Hormozi scenario, right? If that works for you and that is easier to do, then great, do that, right? But I think you're watching this because it hasn't worked for you. It didn't work for me. It would never work for my body and my propensity. I just genetically am predisposed to always gain body fat very quickly, right? My body can become insulin resistant, I think, much faster than most other people. So this is just as much a way that I think is easier to get into your caloric restriction that we need for weight loss, but also at the same time, make dramatic improvements in your metabolic health as well as your overall health. So it's an investment in both categories, and I'll take that any day. Okay, so getting a variety of fruits and vegetables are extremely important. I would say hands down, like we got a ton of micronutrients, but I want to talk more about the fiber. There's an understanding about a diverse consumption of fruits and vegetables will lead to a more diverse microbiome. Your microbiome is your gut, but I like the term microbiome because it's a diversity of various microorganisms, not even just bacteria, but the diversity among bacteria is huge. But you also have other species, non-bacterial, living in your gut. It's pretty wild when you think about it. And just a fun fact, in case you didn't know that, you have more bacterial cells in your gut than you do cells in your body. Let your mind spin for a second. So it's like, more bacteria than human cells? Anyways, let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. But you have about like 8 to 10 pounds of gut bacteria. It's a lot. And a lot of researchers are looking at it as the second brain. It produces so many valuable hormones for us. It influences our health dramatically. There are studies looking at how you can change a microbiome and have just profound impacts on someone's health. So the more diverse your microbiome is, the potentially better your health can get. And so the best way to do it is always be consuming a variety of vegetables, 20 to 30 different fruits and vegetables per week. Now, that's hard. I don't regularly, I try, and I have someone helping me with cooking, and it's still difficult. So this is why I choose to supplement with fiber. Specifically, I supplement with an option that provides a diverse spectrum of fiber. This is why psyllium husk is definitely better than no fiber at all, but we're talking about one type of fiber. So my favorite here is the Life Fiber from Unicity. You can see here, it's got such a awesome spectrum of different sources of fiber that's going to provide a more diverse reaction from the microbiome, because it's going to be feeding different microorganisms. So the more diverse you eat, the better the reaction, the more diversity in the bacterial responses. And I notice that I feel better when I consume this fiber. Okay, so supplements are huge. And so I'm going to roll through this protocol for you guys because I think that it's a very overwhelming space and it's really easy to get lost out there. This is the most basic list for optimal health. There isn't even anything special here for fat loss because, and you can have a conversation about additional supplements that could potentially support fat loss, and I'd be all for that. But none of those, in my opinion, would matter if you are missing key micronutrients that are required for optimal health. So number one, magnesium. My favorite is actually Magmine from Jarrow, as you can see in this picture here. I take about three capsules, 2 grams before bed. Magnesium, it's the active ingredient in this form of magnesium is called magnesium threonate. And a lot of literature shows how magnesium threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier unlike any other form. And I know you're thinking, but I thought glycinate was the best. Glycinate's amazing. And glycinate probably has more potential coverage, but for me, I think a lot at night and my brain's always running. And so I like that effect of the calming myself down and still meeting my magnesium needs. And so magnesium threonate all day. Sometimes I will add some additional magnesium glycinate in the morning. You can go up to 2 grams per day of that. You probably don't need 2 and 2 of both. You can find a ratio that works best for you, but magnesium is crucial. The next one is vitamin D. So you want to get vitamin D3 with K2, 5,000 IUs, and you want to do it in the morning. There's some potential disruption with melatonin production in the evening, so take it in the morning. Okay, number 3, essential fatty acids. I absolutely love this brand here. Nordic, it is the best product that I've seen when it comes to their Pro Omega. You get such a high amount of EPA, DHA. EPA and DHA are the essential fatty acids that you find within fish oil. If you have a fish intolerance or anything like that, you can get an algae-based product too as well. The key here is getting adequate EPA, DHA. You want to get about at least a gram. With the Pro Omega from Nordic, you get almost 2 grams of essential fatty acids, which is why I promote this product. Okay, so greens and or a multivitamin. I would say not and or, a greens or a multivitamin. So Athletic Greens I use, but they're expensive. They're pricey. And so a multivitamin, I think a really good Spectrum multivitamin could do as a substitute if it's not in the budget for us to take a greens. Calorie-free, sugar-free electrolytes. This is why I recommend Dr. Berg's. As you can see here, it's hard to find a electrolyte product that's completely free of calories and sweetened with the good stuff. My 3 favorite sweeteners, by the way, it's worth mentioning to you guys: allulose, monk fruit, and stevia. I don't freak out if I have a diet soda, which has the other forms, because I rather drink a diet soda, and I do have a couple diet sodas per week. But aside from diet sodas, when it comes to sweetening foods and using sweeteners, I only choose from allulose, monk fruit, and stevia. Dr. Berg's electrolytes are great. Now, Dr. Berg's electrolytes and all electrolyte products are not meant for a true 24-hour or longer fast. And so when it comes to longer fasts, we need to add additional salt to meet our sodium requirements. And so 1/4 of a teaspoon of pink Himalayan or Celtic salt goes a long way. In fact, you'll notice in a couple long fasts, if you're not consuming that extra salt, symptoms of sodium deficiency, headache, brain fog, muscle cramping. So don't miss out on that. Don't skimp out on that. Add that to your supplement regimen, and you'll feel great. The last supplement that I want to talk about is curcumin and resveratrol. So this is in the semi-essential category. If you are suffering with any sort of inflammatory condition, an autoimmune disease, PCOS, obese, you have obesity, you have a lot of extra weight in your body, right? We know inflammation's high, then curcumin and resveratrol definitely become essential. So you're going to have to make the decision on your own. And obviously my patients, we work with them and review their history, and we can tell them, we can work with them and give them that adjudication. So curcumin and resveratrol, all these supplements, I'm going to link to them in that free guide for you guys. But the combination of both are the most potent anti-inflammatory response that you can get from any supplement. And I just want to be clear. I see so many influencers promoting this and saying it's the best anti-inflammatory. But when it comes down to pure scientifically backed research, nothing beats the heavy research behind curcumin and the fact that it gets a synergistic effect from resveratrol. So don't let yourself fall into the slip of thinking something else is more powerful for anti-inflammatory. Curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric, with resveratrol at a good dose, right? And all the doses will be available for you in the free guide, will make a powerful impact. And it's the strongest that you can do from a supplement, hands down. Okay, so real quick, I wanted to show you guys this insulin spiking shake. It's a very smooth recipe. Essentially, all you're going to do is blend whey protein with 5 grams of leucine and some protein digestive enzymes. Okay, so why leucine? Leucine is well documented as the main branch chain amino acid, and branch chain amino acids have always been promoted for their muscle building properties, but leucine specifically drives that mTOR pathway and spikes insulin up. Remember, we talked about insulin. As bad as insulin is, and we want to stay away from it in the fat loss section of the week, we want insulin levels higher in the muscle building section of the week. And so leucine will dramatically increase insulin. So will whey protein. And the concept here of the digestive enzymes is that as the insulin spikes really high, the protein is broken down faster. So the combination of both allows for a quicker delivery of nutrients to where they need to go, which the insulin opens up the doors on the muscle cells to drive the amino acids, which is the byproduct of that whey protein digestion. And the concept here is better muscle growth. One key, though, is wait 1 hour after you train to consume this shake. The reason for waiting 1 hour is there's an additional effect. There's an additional stressor on the muscles after you train where the muscles break down even more and you get a stronger hormetic response from this high insulin spiking shake. Finally, add some high glycemic carbohydrates. Nothing crazy, right? Because we're overall on a fat loss program. So for me, one ripe banana and I'm good, right? High glycemic carbohydrate, and you'll be solid. So let's talk about fat mobilizing peptides, because this is, and look, if you guys haven't seen it, check out my Peptide 101 video. It's the most comprehensive guide and practical guide you're going to find online about everything you need to know about peptides. So these peptides, what makes them so special is they improve metabolic flexibility. They improve your body's ability to mobilize and break down fat, which is crucial, especially when you're fasting. Expect the whole spectrum. The more metabolically flexible you are, the greater degree of fat loss you will accomplish and the less muscle mass you will lose. So AOD 9604, 500 micrograms in troche or 200 micrograms of injection every single day is very powerful. After AOD, which is a fragment of human growth hormone, we can start looking at this category of peptides called growth hormone secretagogues. And so CJC ipamorelin is a powerful combination of these growth hormone secretagogue peptides, which will stimulate the release of your own growth hormone, which is awesome. About 100 micrograms twice a day, 5 days on, 2 days off. Then you have Sermorelin, about 500 micrograms twice a day, 5 on, 2 off. Tesamorelin, about 1 gram per day, 5 on, 2 off. Tesamorelin is probably the most powerful one there, but it's also the most expensive. So when you follow this protocol, the protocol itself is going to do great. I only want to mention these peptides because they can take you to the next level. And they are awesome. I use these peptides interchangeably from time to time too as well. And we're going to link to it at the end where if you guys want to schedule a consultation for these peptides or anything else, you'll have access to that. MOTS-c. MOTS-c is in its own category. It will improve metabolic flexibility, but it's also going to decrease insulin resistance. MOTS-c is understood to actually repair the mitochondrial DNA. So the mitochondria are known as the batteries, the powerhouses within your cells. And as we age, we know that there's a certain amount of mitochondrial damage. And so improvements to mitochondria means improvements to your function. And so MOTS-c literally repairs and improves. And so if you can get your hands on MOTS-c, it's pricey. It's probably the most expensive peptide here, but well worth it. It's a one-time investment. So the rest of these peptides are sort of used as is for an effect while you're using them, but MOTS-c is different. It's an investment to improve your mitochondria, which at that point afterwards, the mitochondria have improved their function. So MOTS-c is awesome. All right. So now let's get into 2 categories that are powerful enough to why I have them in this video. We're going to talk about stress and we're going to talk about sleep. So stress in your life and lack of quality sleep are both examples of stressors that cause spikes in your cortisol level. And it's those spikes in your cortisol level that will derail your progress in lasting weight loss, right? So higher levels of cortisol means higher levels of blood glucose release, which means higher levels of insulin. And so we get that same problem where, yes, you'll lose weight in a caloric deficit, but higher blood sugar means metabolic reaction, like increased hunger levels and decreased metabolism, which creates problems down the line. So if you are dealing with extra stress in your life, all we need to do is pick a single stress management technique and implement it into your lifestyle. That's it. There's so many here. I'm going to list a couple of them too as well. Here on the screen, you got breath work, you got yoga, you got meditation, you got mindfulness, you have all these different apps that you find. There's so many stress management apps. Sometimes just kind of being there and being with yourself too as well. There's many forms right, of these therapies. Just pick one. Pick one. I'm a fan of breath work. So I take 5 minutes before bed almost every night, and I sit there and I breathe. And as I'm breathing, I'm paying attention to my breaths. I'm paying attention to my body. And my mind wanders all the time. I have a very active mind, and it's my own thing that I'm working on, is I can't seem to turn it off. And so this is an activity that I do that is de-stressful, and the literature is very clear on any of these sort of things, decreasing the stress responses and giving our body an ability to tolerate it better. And so I focus on my breath. If my mind wanders off, I bring it back. But breath work is my choice. Choose whatever makes sense for you and implement that as part of your bedtime routine. You could also do it in the morning too as well. I prefer bedtime because for me, it kind of makes sense because it's also relaxing to do one of these stress management techniques. And guess what? We're going to talk about sleep. And one of the pieces to good night's sleep is relaxing before bed. You can't be high strung and hop into bed and expect to fall asleep. So that's why I recommend your stress management technique closer to bed. Okay, let's get into optimizing sleep. I'm going to go through a list, and we're going to rapid fire here. I'll have separate videos that I'll make for you guys, but we'll take a deep dive into sleep optimization. But I want to give you guys the secrets and the things that you can do to optimize your sleep. Okay, so first of all, what do we define as optimal sleep? 7 to 9 hours should be the goal. You have to listen to your body. If you're sleeping 7 hours and you're still tired, there could be some medical issues going on, but it could just be that you're not letting yourself sleep enough. So you need to figure it out. 7 to 9. I personally strive for about 8 hours every night. Live by your sleep schedule. This is huge. Sleep schedule is, and I'm putting these guys in order, by the way, of what the research shows is probably the most impactful for the most amount of people. So sleep schedule, believe it or not, I was surprised too to find out, is one of the most important things. And it is, it's not easy to do because what do we want to do, right? We want to have fun on the weekends. And so Friday night, Saturday night, we're staying out later. And don't even get me started on alcohol. We're going to talk about that. But even if you're not drinking, just going to sleep 2 to 4 hours later over the weekend, and you think about Sunday night, you are affecting your body's ability to get as good of a night's sleep on Sunday night, and it throws you off, and it takes about a day or two to fully adapt, and you're repeating the cycle every single day. The damage to your potential for optimal sleep, aka producing more cortisol, derailing your metabolic health and weight loss potential, is no different than going to travel, say, 3 to 4 hours away every single week, right? Minus the radiation from being in the air. So this is very, very damaging. This is a big deal. So sleep by a schedule and get used to that. And look, I'll tell you, it just allows for so much more productivity when you go to bed at a certain time and you wake up at a certain time, 7 days a week. You'll get so much more done and you'll be so much more happier if you can change your frame of thought and make that investment into you and your health. Of course, occasionally I have a social setting where I am going to stay up late, and that does happen. It just doesn't happen as often anymore because I prioritize my health, and that's what matters the most to me. So we got our bedtime routine. Number 2 is dimming the lights. So dimming the lights is a very powerful thing to do. So I actually have an alarm that goes off. So my bedtime's 10. My alarm goes off at 8. It tells me to dim the lights. And so I go around my house and I turn off as many lights as I possibly can. And I switch to a dimmer setting that I have in some of my areas. And certain areas, I don't have a dimmer. And so all I did was opt to invest in a little bulb. Essentially, you can go on Amazon and buy it. It's called lower flux and or red bulbs. What they're going to do is they're going to reduce significantly the amount of blue light. So if I am working, and some of these days I've been working pretty much to the last hour before bed, in my workstation, I turn off the lights. I have the low flux bulb so I can still see. And my computer screen actually has a program called Flux, which dims the blue light exposure too as well. So we want to, as you can tell with the dimming of the lights, what we're really trying to do is reduce our exposure to blue light as much as possible. And so dimming and turning off as many lights preps the body for a good night's sleep. Okay. Number 3, let's cool it off, baby. The research shows very clearly that we need to start dropping our core body temperature in order to slip into great sleep. So when that alarm goes off, for me personally, that's when I ensure the AC is switched over to a lower temperature so that it takes about 2 hours or so. So by the time I'm getting into bed, 9:30, 9:45 is when I'm slipping in there. It's already nice and cool. If you have a different way to cool off your room, that's all you really need to do. So that's totally up to you. If you got a whole house and maybe not everybody else wants the entire house to be colder, you just need to at least cool off your room. So I've seen many people invest in a portable AC unit. There's all these different blankets and different cooling devices. Get your body colder. You will appreciate the better sleep. Optimal temperatures can be somewhere around 65 to 68 to slip into great quality sleep. All right. So number 4, 100% absence of light. So we've already dimmed the light, right? The last 2 hours. Now, when it's time to actually go to bed, we want 100% blocking of the light. So blackout curtains are a great investment so that you ensure all the blue light is blocked in your room. An eye mask is necessary if there are certain lights that you cannot block. So I always travel with an eye mask, but if you can block off 100% of your light, then you're fine. You don't necessarily need a mask at all. So looking at all the devices in your room, all the electronic devices, a lot of them can be on and a lot of them can be producing some blue light. So figure out a way to block them, put them behind something, but get as close to 100% blockage of light and you will get better sleep. Okay, number 5, develop a better relationship with your bed. Your mind has a strong associative type relationship. And so the more time we spend in our bed not sleeping, the increased likelihood of your body developing a relationship where it associates the bed with a wakeful state. And so we need to stay away from the bed as much as possible when we're not sleeping. So this is an ongoing thing. This is a habit. This is a knowingness, right? You know this, and all you have to do moving forward is respect it and try not to spend hours and hours and all this extra time that we sometimes like to do because the bed's comfortable. Find a different area in your house that you can make comfortable to as well, so that you can relax and enjoy time to yourself or with your loved one. Get your mind off of itself is the next one. This is a big one. And this is actually one that I have struggled with time and time again when I get into projects, when I get into deep things that we're doing with the clinic and helping you guys out with all the different platforms that I do. I sometimes find myself unable to fall asleep, thinking about the videos I need to make, thinking about the live and all this kind of stuff. I just cannot turn off my brain. So this is one of the common reasons that people have a hard time falling asleep. And we talked about the magnesium threonate being a supplement that does help that. But there are strategies that you can do when you are laying there and you feel like you cannot turn off your brain. Same thing if you wake up in the middle of the night and you know you've been asleep for a certain amount of time, but you can't fall back asleep. Same thing. We need to get our mind off of itself. And so put your mind onto something else. Specifically at that point, if you're already in bed, laying down, really breath work, meditation. Get something in play and develop this relationship that you know when this happens, rather than lay there frustrated and do nothing, do your go-to, whether it is, for me, it's breath work, and start that, get your mind off of itself, and watch yourself fall into sleep much faster. Don't look at the clock. Looking at the clock is one of the worst things you can do because it does trigger this potential anxiety reaction because now you're looking at the clock thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get up in the morning. And I have just don't do that. Lay there, get your mind off of itself, fall back asleep. This is the best thing you can do in that situation. No caffeine 10 hours before bed. This one's really interesting because I myself can have a cup of coffee 4 hours, 5 hours, and still go to sleep. But when it comes to sleep structure, which we call sleep architecture, falling asleep and staying asleep is definitely one of the prerequisites that we should strive for when it comes to quality sleep. But there are other variables taking place, even when we are asleep for the whole time and we know we didn't wake up, for example, that are just behind our knowingness, which we refer to as the sleep architecture. So you just have to understand that if you have caffeine closer to bed, despite how you feel, you are not getting as much restorative sleep as you could be if you ended your caffeine intake about 10 hours prior to bed. So take that for what it is. But and I'm a big fan of high quality coffee. So I'll do a cup of coffee in the morning. And if I am going to have a second cup midday, I cut it off around 1 o'clock. That's my latest. All right. So if the protocol with getting into the long fast is just too intense or too difficult, maybe you don't have access to GLP-1 medications. And if I didn't make that clear, we can get you guys covered. We service across the nation. But if GLP-1 medications is something that you can't do or don't want to do, then you might, and you are in the spectrum of more overweight, more sick, this protocol may be too difficult for you, specifically that long fast, to get into. Don't worry. We have an alternative pre-protocol that will be a game changer for you to be able to allow your body to slip into the protocol that we've just finished discussing. So it's very simple. Go keto for 2 weeks. Like really 2 weeks is all I'm asking. Like I know it's not going to be the easiest thing, but it's going to be significantly more doable than that long fast if you were hitting a roadblock. After you go keto for 2 weeks, then we're going to flip it to a single carb day per week, an 8 to 10 hour window where we carb out. Think of that as your cheat meal or cheat meals, cheat day, whatever you want to call it. But after this and you're going to do this for a couple months until you feel great, you will lose a ton of body fat during doing it. I can promise you that. You go keto for 6 days and then you have one high carb day. But I do want you to eventually transition into the other protocol that we've just finished discussing. This is a prerequisite if your body can't do the other one. And we've talked about the reasons why that might be. So there's much less rules to worry about because it's just get your ketogenic state in and then have your high carb day. Really, the only rule on this day, believe it or not, is actually going for at least some of your carbohydrates being higher glycemic. But we always want to be healthy carbs. We're not saying a bunch of processed crap. Think rice bowls, think white potatoes, think a little bit of white bread. I wouldn't call that healthy at all, but I would rather you do that than a bunch of sodas and a bunch of processed crap. And well, bread's processed, but a bunch of sugary and junk food stuff. So the goal here is that we break the 6 day cycle with a smash of insulin to the body. The research behind this shows that by doing this, by spiking our insulin very high after a 6 day window of going keto, we start to prevent that metabolic downregulation, that slow down your metabolism that we see with people long-term on a ketogenic diet. And so go for it, have a high glycemic day, have your cheat meals in that day. And after a few months of doing this, you feel really good. Be sure to push yourself back into the regimen that we discussed. And so this is where we're going to end off, looking at this chart, putting it all together. So now we understand the pieces. Now we understand how everything works. We talked about the ability to shift it. If the weekend is a work time for you and then you have days off where you have more fun and social things going on during the week, then just switch it around. It doesn't matter. The only thing that needs to matter is that we have the lifting on one part of the week and we have the fat loss portion on the other part. I don't really care what days they fall on, but if you follow this protocol, once you can get into this, I promise you the results will be amazing. And you will find, very likely, let me know how you guys do, that it's going to be easier to adhere to. You don't have to work out. You don't have to try and put so much effort forward, because once this is in, it just becomes easier and easier to do. And you're going to love not having to go to the gym as much. You're going to love not having to worry about like the effects of what you eat and how you eat it, because the fasting is so powerful. It allows you so much more wiggle room, and you know you're going to be in a caloric deficit without even having to try or count or any of that stuff. Like I said, I don't want to do that, and I don't want you guys to do any of that. I want sustainable formats, guys, and this is your ticket. Again, if you want to get your hands on the free guide, which gives you all the links to everything that we talked about here, all the supplements, and a breakdown of a protocol to follow that this video helps you implement, then I'll link to that in the description. If you guys enjoyed this video today, I strongly recommend you check out this one here. This was an interview that I did where I discussed the protocols and everything that I do for successful lasting weight loss. I'll see you guys later.